Like the wholesome one just said, got to win some damn ball games. Okay, well, got the coordinators in play to make that happen for 2023. Welcome to the Hurricanes live show we've got for you each and every Thursday night right here at the Voice of College Football, courtesy the wholesome one. Catch him on his YouTube channel, of course. How you doing tonight?
Man, just knocked out a great workout. Shout out to my trainer, Ivy. And hey, great news for the Canes. We're going to get into some of that today. Again, be thankful and grateful for life as we should, because you got one of the best gifts this morning, and that's waking up. Everybody doesn't get that. So let's have a great time today. Let's have some jokes, and let's talk about some Miami Hurricanes football, a program that is not back, a program that is far from elite, but a program that is getting and putting the work in. And that starts with two of the hires, and that starts with the training and the lifting that the young men are going through right now, probably as we speak. I know definitely during the afternoon, but right now they're getting after it too.
I am tempted, just like everybody else, to get a little bit down and think about what's going wrong, but can't do it. We have too much to be thankful for, too much to be grateful for. I'm too blessed. I am too blessed.
Absolutely. And that's important, because sometimes you never know who needs to hear that. And hundreds of people will watch this eventually, hopefully thousands of people. And if you could just spread a little bit of positivity, regardless of religion, a little bit of positivity into somebody, you'll spark a nice flame, man.
Thousands, wholesome one. Thousands and thousands watching. Yes. Appreciate the wholesome one being here. We always have a good time talking Miami football. And boy, two new coordinators in 1 week. And what's interesting about those hires, among other things, is that they both had just received jobs one had just received a job at a new position. I'm also thinking of the new inside linebackers coach, Derek Nicholson, who just moved from Louisville to Cincinnati. But, I'll let you tee it up in regards to either side of the football.
Well, first off, let's go ahead and get this understood. These coaches, I'm so used to saying young men, if they're not Kevin Steele, who's like 60 or 80 or however old he is. Here's the beautiful thing, right? They both have been, more likely, let's go with Coach Guidry. Let's start out on the defensive side of the ball. Every offseason or every new hire, whether it's me, whether it's Cam, whether it's Paul, whether it's whoever that gets this spot, we get all excited. Miami's going to do this. Miami can do that. Miami this and that, and these position coaches and that position coaches. Not saying that the previous coaches didn't try hard. It didn't work out for some reason. Kevin Steele is one of the most respected defensive coordinators in all of college football, and the defense didn't look like Kevin Steele had anything to do with it. So as far as throwing some offseason hype on it, not going to be me. I'm excited for the young men's opportunity. I'm excited for the freshness. You're getting a new car. It's nice. It smells good in here. And you got it from CarMax. And you drive off the lot and something's wrong. Okay. Get this driving and the AC done went out on you. You wake up the next day and it doesn't have that same new car smell. Okay, that's what happens when Miami gets new coaches and new hires, and everybody thinks it's, we're fixing it. We're 0-1 Canes. The U is back, baby. But they're going to be a different scheme. They're sticking to the 4-2-5 scheme. But Coach Guidry has a different viewpoint on how he runs the 4-2-5. Let's talk about it. When you talk about the 4-2-5, the 4 up front is the first thing. You talk about the down lineman. But in actuality, he runs more of a 2-4-5. So what that means for those of us who specialize in this, if you played a 3-4 defense and you went to the nickel and you went down a couple notches, it was a thing called a 2-4-5 that looked just like a nickel. What that mean was your 2 DNs came in and played D tackle, and your outside linebackers were stand-up rushers on third downs. You guys know what I'm talking about. That's what he runs. So as far as defensive tackles, he runs what's called a 32. A 32 mark means you have a 3 to the strong side and you have a 2 or 2I to the weak side. Okay. He also runs 2 wide.
Question. Sorry to cut you off. So when you just made that designation, are you talking about every time the offense comes to the line of scrimmage, that defensive line adjusts based on where the strong side is for the offense?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So most times you hear some strong right or Ringo or strong left or Louis, and that would illustrate where the 3 technique would go to. Because more than likely it's either a back that's designating this strength, and the thing that supersedes the back is the tight end. So tight right, tight left. Now there's some instances in some schemes where you could go tight right, strong left, because for example, you might have a tight end to the right, but you have a back that's to the left, plus you have 2 wide receivers that's to the left. So obviously we got 1 guy over here, but 2 over there. We're still going to call that tight right and 3. We're going to call that strong left and tight right. So, but that's getting a little too it can get real finicky breaking down defense. But anyway, basis 32, 3 technique to the strong side, 2 or 2I to the weak side, depending on how he wants to run it. 2 stand-up edge rushers. Okay, think Lawrence Taylor, think Jason Taylor, think Terrell Suggs. 2-point stances, flying off of that ball. Now, you think to yourself, okay, well, for Miami, we have some guys like Cyrus Moss, top 6 edge rusher coming out of class 2 seasons ago. I like this scheme for a guy like that. Nigel Kelly. I like this scheme for a guy like that. Now, Messidor, who was one of the higher rated defensive end / edge rushers in college football last year, you would not know it because he played on a 5-7 football team. And if you didn't watch the Virginia Tech game, you don't know who this guy is. Well, Messidor is one of the better defensive ends in the country. Go check out some of his stats. Guy can really get out the ball and off the snap. Transfer from West Virginia, who they had playing inside. He comes to Miami and does a really nice job off the edge for Miami. Now, you wonder how we're going to make that work for a guy like that, because he's not your typical 6'4.5", 6'5", wiry, linky frame, long-armed Jason Taylor type, like a Nigel Leak and like a Cyrus Moss. He would be more of what you would call a Terrell Suggs, a 6'3", oddly long arms, but he's in the 250 range, 260 range, 270 range, very dense and built waist style. So he's probably going to be on that strong side more likely than not. There's a couple other guys we'll get into off that edge. So let's talk about how the front is going to operate. Now, moving backwards, the 2 inside linebackers. We've seen this for the last 7 or 8 years or so at Miami. As far as previous defensive coordinator Manny Diaz bringing that kind of style over, transitioning from it being our 3rd down defense to the University of Miami's full base defense running a 4-2-5. So we'll see what's going to happen with the linebacker position. I really like this for a guy like Wes Blasank. He played in this kind of scheme at Miami Central, a very nickel dime-ish kind of scheme, because in Miami it's a bunch of air raid spread stuff going on. So you need to be able to combat that defensively and have less big bodies on the field, more speed bodies on the field that can tackle. So I really like this kind of scheme for a guy like Wes Blasank, playing that will, maybe even transitioning to Mike if 1 or 2 other guys comes out of nowhere for that will position. The secondary, Miami has an All-America in Cam Kinchins as a safety. Miami also has one of the very polarizing figures on our defense in number 0, James Williams, who just had a birthday. Happy belated birthday to James Williams. We'll see what this scheme does for a guy like that, whether he's going to transition to the striker full-time, whether he's going to be a safety under Coach Guidry. We'll see. Miami has a new influx at cornerback with the Brown brothers who signed with Miami. You also have a couple guys returning from the previous season, and the exodus of Tyreek Stevenson, Al Blaze Jr., and DJ Ivy. So a lot of new faces on that back end, excluding 2 safeties with at least almost 2 whole years of experience, because If you remember, in 2021, Cam Kinchins had to come in the game against Alabama to start the season because light-skinned warrior Bubba Bolden got knocked out the game for doing a helmet-to-helmet. So Cam is almost 2 whole years as a starter / big-time, big-snap contributor on the Miami defense. Now, Coach Guidry has plenty that he's brought to the table as far as statistically in his time. Okay, he's very widely respected at the group of 5 level and lower where he's coached as far as his scheme and how he's aggressive and he comes after the quarterback. He heats up the quarterback, but he also trusts his corners to have a lot of deep quarters and man coverage. Now, Miami has not shown the ability to do that on a consistent basis. So fans will be holding our breath, hoping that we don't see Tallahassee bombers over the top on the third play of the game for 80 yards because we just can't run stride for stride with their wide receivers, or in Middle Tennessee State just running right past our secondary. So again, the overhypeness that you usually would get, the Mark, we winning 10 games. Mark, we're going 10-2. Mark, we're going to ACC championship. You're not getting that from me this season. Not because of just Miami going 5-7 last year, but you're doing the same thing over and over. You tend to come off insane. Okay, and I may be a fanatic, but I'm not insane. Eventually, you want to see this team, you want to see these young men, you want to see this scheme go out and prove it, and then prove it the next year, and the next game, and the next game, and the next game, and then the next year, and build on a consistent basis on an upward trajectory. The last time I used that terminology was referring to 2016 to 2017, and in hoping that transition into 2018, which it has not. So we're hoping that whatever they're building as a foundation right now, defensively, as far as under Coach Guidry and his previous accomplishments as a defensive coordinator, can transition well. The communication can go well. His tutelage can go well. He can finally put whatever staff and complete the staff together of whom is going to be the edge rush coach, who's going to be the defensive line coach, who's going to be D tackles, who's going to be middle linebacker and outside linebacker, who's working with the strikers, who's working with our cornerbacks, who's working with our safeties. Now, these are questions that a lot of us that cover the program don't have all the answers to. But we're hoping that Coach Cristobal and his staff have all the answers. And if they're ready to just put their heads down, put the work in, continue to recruit, and bring in the talent to help things change for the University of Miami's football program defensively.
I'm going to throw out a question about Kevin Steele. So Nick Saban is impressed enough with Kevin Steele, and obviously has worked with him in the past, to hire Kevin Steele. Kevin Steele did not produce a good defense with Miami by any stretch last year, but had the talent on that side of the football to be better. I'm not going to say to be great or one of the best defenses in the country, but to be much better. And we know that it's a matchup game to a certain extent. If the talent is comparable, if the talent's not comparable, you can run off tackle if you're 50 times better than the opponent and just blow them away with physicality and speed.
Right.
But if the talent's comparable, then matchups come into play. Mm-hmm. Could it be that there were a lot of things working against Kevin Steele last year? We may have noted that a couple guys didn't necessarily always show up. Maybe there were some offensive coordinators on the schedule last year who figured some things out against his defense that other offensive coordinators from previous years hadn't figured out. I know there's a lot of working parts there and a lot of things that could have happened that, maybe if he sticks around this year, he puts together a top 25 defense.
I would never question his knowledge nor his encyclopedia of great history. I mean, you talk about a guy that he would sit down and he could bring up a play from 1988 when he was a defensive coordinator at Insert University here. And he watched this one play the week before, and they used the same play, and it didn't work. And then in 2003, he called it as a defensive coordinator at Auburn, and it worked. I mean, he has a plethora of knowledge and is a great teacher, in my opinion. Now, there's a term of having too many chefs in the kitchen. And when you have a guy, you have him, you have Charlie Strong, who's also respected as a defensive mind, young up-and-coming coach and Coach Dye, Hall of Famer in Ed Reed in the back shadow. You have a Hall of Famer in Jason Taylor. You got some of the Oregon family guys like Joe Salavea. You got a guy who just had an uptick from UTSA and Coach Wright that got an opportunity to come to Miami. I mean, all these different guys are sitting there. And how do they all get on the same page? Different backgrounds, different schemes, different thought processes of how we should attack offenses and how we should run, and knowledge of the team and knowledge of the depth, and how do all of them get together? And then, okay, we're all on the same page. Now we have to go out and teach that to these young men with the confidence like we're already on the same page, like we're already meshed and come as one unit, and then get it to work all in 6 months, and then prepare for August. And it just didn't click. Now, in some instances, Mark, when it's a smooth fit like a glove, it pops. What's up, Mr. HD? Thank you. Appreciate the shout out. It pops, right? Manny Diaz comes down. Miami spent the last 4 years in a 3-4. Young men just itching at the chance to go to a 4-3 and fly off the ball. Smooth glove. 16 and 17, and even a little bit of 18, some dominant defensive performances. Coach Rhett Lashley officially bringing the base spread to Miami. Now, we did complain. We complained about the vanilla run scheme and the predictability, but there's also games like NC State 2020 where you needed 45 points to beat NC State on the road, albeit in the COVID year. You needed those points. You had those points because you had the right route combos and things of that nature to get it done. A Duke team who you needed those points, who now 2 years later kicks your butt at home. You needed those points to score. I say all these things to say, whatever the scheme or thought process or whatever that Coach Steele had didn't mesh with the roster, and it didn't fit like a glove, and it just didn't click. I believe he is extremely knowledgeable and still can keep coaching for 3 to 4 years. Now, the other side is he's stepping into Alabama, so guess what? He's probably going to have a great season. Great talent, great defensive culture. The head coach is a defensive guy. They've had some great coaching and tutelage over their time there. So you're just coming in, and now they want to learn your verbiage and what do you mean by this? And okay, you address, all right, we get a tight end that motion's over. Okay, you want to call that Louis when we used to call it lousy, whatever. You want to get on the same, you want to be able to speak the same language and have it flow. Similar to, again, I keep bringing up Coach Diaz because the same thing happened with him. Coach Diaz leaves Miami and goes to Penn State, a program that has been doing very, very well, kind of low key because they can't beat Ohio State and Michigan, but two very, very elite programs in the top 1 percentile of the whole sport. They can't beat. So they're 10-2 or 11-3 because they may lose to Iowa or something like that, but they're winning the Big Time Bowl here. They're winning a Rose Bowl there now for the first time in over 20 years. They won the Rose Bowl this year. But he stepped into a great defensive culture, a great defensive history, a program that is known as LBU or one of the LBUs. They've had their head coach, Coach Farr, went to VTech and is rebuilding the VTech program, and he was fielding some top 15 defenses his entire time at Penn State. So they're also very talented and had a great defensive culture that he stepped into. Those are not things that you can say about the Miami Hurricanes defense or the Miami Hurricanes team. So again, things just did not click. I don't think that that's a slight to Coach Strong because I feel like he may go be the linebackers coach at Alabama. He was just a defensive analyst there 2 seasons ago. Coach Adai, I don't know if he's gone or whatever. Coach Wright may go back there. Who knows? But what I'm saying is whatever happened with throwing all those chefs in the kitchen and all those big-time resumes, it didn't click. So now we've gone more of a group of five way. We're bringing in some fiery coaches that have something to prove, a chip on their shoulder, and I think they will get a different level of response from the Miami Hurricanes player than the previous coaches have. Again, we will see. I'm not screaming for Reese Senior Bowl invitees. I'm not screaming for Orange Bowl. I'm definitely not saying playoffs. I'm just saying I think scheme wise they will respond a little better.
So once you get the chance to do this, and it's a long off season, and I'm sure that you will take this on at some point, I'm going to be interested to hear what you have to say when you go back and watch some Marshall defense from last year.
Mm-hmm.
Look at it, look at their scheme, look at how they played it, and think, how similar is that to Kevin Steele's defense and what these players were asked to do last year? How much do I like what they're doing there at Marshall, which you got to like it. They finished freaking top at 5 in just about every category of defense last year. And then take your knowledge of the Miami defensive personnel and try to kind of fit that into what you're watching on film for Marshall and say, yeah, I can see us doing that, or we may have some issues trying to pull that off with these particular players at that position. That will be a good read for me to get from you.
Absolutely. I've done a little bit of that, but one of the biggest things that I love that the coach said straight up, Coach Guidry just said that was at Marshall. I
Yeah.
have to redo it here at Miami. You got a level of caliber athlete, different level of psyche. Also, Mark, you have guys. Call a spade a spade. A young man who earns a defense, let's say a middle linebacker that earns an offer to Marshall and signs to Marshall. Maybe he had offers from San Jose State, San Diego State, University of North Dakota, University of South Dakota, and maybe another smaller school, and chooses Marshall. It's different from an inside linebacker who was ranked top 6 in his in country, who had offers from USC and Michigan State and Ohio State and Michigan, and then chooses Miami. Okay, it's different caliber of player. Could be size, could be weight room, could be aggression, could be when they make tackle and the ball go flying. More likely than not, it's the size. Trust me. There's this one thing that coaches do where they like go over to the height part. They click it. I've seen it. They click height and they do a cutoff at 6 foot, and then that's where they recruit from, 6 foot and above. Okay, so you're hardworking 5'10", 220 pounder who's a leader and a 4-year All-American may not be getting that big offer, but he may get that Marshall offer. He may get that San Diego State offer. He may get the Tulane offer. And what happens when you're so used, Mark, to coaching those kind of young men, there could be a positive and negative to it. Because you could be so used to having a whole bunch of tryhards. Miami fans are so synonymous with this. Give me a 3-star from the state of Florida over a 5-star from anywhere else because I want him to have dog. I want him to be a tryhard. Because that's what Ray was and Ed Reed was, and insert name of fantasy Hall of Famer here. It's different now, okay? It's different. And when you have coaches that are so used to coaching those kinds of players, they don't have to get you fired up to go to weights in the morning. They don't have to call your phone and figure out where you're at because you might have beat them there. You got the whole team stretching before the coaches show up. We got lifts at 5:30 and the whole team is in here stretching at 5 o'clock because we have that kind of caliber in the psyche of the players where they just want it, Mark. They want it. And it isn't about who the team is that week. It isn't about, oh, man, they're our rival. It's about the fact that they want to get better no matter what. And it can be tough to go from that mindset to a rebuild where you got some who think that way, but most and majority don't. And you have to go through the process of either trying to get those guys out in a nice way or try to get the other people to pull up to that level. And it's crazy because then you got fans that'll blame a guy like Coach Steele. Oh, he doesn't know how to coach linebackers. He don't know how to coach defense. That guy sucks. No, he just didn't have the guys that wanted it, that would flip tables thinking about playing football that day. They couldn't even sleep the night before because they got weights. They can't wait to get weights. Why? Because weights transition to better players. They can't wait to get to the nutrition room because getting my body in shape means I get to be a better football player. And I get fired up thinking about this because we don't have enough of those guys. And we wonder why we're winning 5 and 6 and 7 games and celebrating no-name bowl losses or making it to a bowl, and hopefully we get to 6 and 6, and hopefully Tallahassee's quarterback pulls a shoestring so that we don't lose. When it used to be about, I prepared my ass off to beat yours. And if you get me, I can come to the 50-yard line and shake your hand and say, I'll see you later. Now it's like, oh, man, hey, good job, man. I appreciate. Hey, I like your picture on Instagram. Nice touchdown today, buddy. And jog to the sideline and jog to the locker room and get mad at a coach for getting mad at you about not caring about losing that week and liking rival players' pictures and commenting, much love, fam, great game. I don't went on the whole rant. I forgot what we was talking about.
I kind of forget what we were talking about as well, but something that you said in there reminded me that I'm in the midst of a 3-part series over on the main channel where I'm posting my coaches rankings. And so I'm posting the second part. I still have to post the top 20, but I'll be interested to get people's responses to where I've got Mario Cristobal. So I'm going to leave that link in the chat of where I
in the
ranked,
conference
in the Power 5.
22.
22.
22.
Okay. The other thing 22. That came to mind right at the end of what your rant there, what came to mind was you got to know that these players, they understand who they're playing. And the really mature ones are able to kind of put that to the side and say, hey, we're playing Clemson today. You know, I know what that means, but I'm not in fear. We're ready to go. I'm focused. I'm locked in. Oh, we're playing Bethune-Cookman. I'm locked in. I'm focused. I'm going to play my best.
Absolutely.
I'm going to pay attention to my assignments and all that, but not everybody can do that. No. Something you said in there just kind of gave me a visual of, and this is the first time I really thought of it quite this way, that when you're the caliber of a player that can start at Miami and you're walking off the field after you got your butts kicked by Middle Tennessee, knowing that none of those guys, a couple of those guys, but basically almost no one on that roster would have even been considered to be recruited to play on your team.
Right.
And they just whipped your rear ends.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is that feeling like? Do they just kind of disregard it? No, that was a fluke. They're really not that good. Or are they kind of stunned and shocked thinking, that dude that was across from me, he was actually he was pretty good.
One of the other things about it is the preparation. I mean, you go a whole off season, right, Mark? And there's a couple games that are circled. If I'm the defensive coordinator at Middle Tennessee State University, and I know I get a chance to play the University of Miami, I got my guys fired up for that game. We're going to come out fired up. Now, that game, in a nutshell, looks horrible. But there was, a pick six on like the second play of the game. We didn't have a first down, scoop and score. I mean, we were down 14-0, 40 seconds into the game. You already have a shaky team coming off of a Texas A&M loss. No one's in the stadium because it's a storm out there. And ESPN couldn't even set up their cameras. It was storming that bad. Okay. Now, not making excuses. I'm just giving you the backdrop. Now, you mix that with a team that at plenty of moments showed that they were willing to quit. I don't care about coach flipping tables. My NIL check dropped. Okay. I don't care. Oh, I ain't even play today. Or I did my thing, but the team lost, so it is what it is. Now, do you have that at other programs? Yes. It's not just a Miami thing. Not just a this generation thing. You've had guys like that. Winning kind of cures that mindset and gets those kinds of guys to change and buy in and get in line, those kinds of things. But as someone who's had a major upset, been a part of major upsets, and also been like, wow, we really lost to blankety blank. Wow. Have alumni come in and losing their mind on you. We don't get lose to them. Some people respond, some people don't. And this is where, if you know your players, not just the logo or the number, okay, you got to know the young men, how to get them to respond to the adversity, to the losing, to the TFL, to the strip sack, scoop and score, to the bomb. Okay, young man gives up a bomb. When he comes to the sideline, are you going, hey, man, it's all right. Hey, it happens. Let's just communicate. Some young men, Mark, they respond better to that. Some young men, you got to grab by the face mask and pray to God the cameras don't catch you and the audio don't catch what you're about to say to this young man. Some people respond to that well. Some people, Mark, they start pouting instantly. They come to the sideline, man, get out my face. Trying to fight coaches and players, and it was their fault. They got bombed. You have to know your young men. You have to know the psychology and the psychological level of the young men. How do they respond? Some, like I said, you get fired up, you start doing the jumping jacks, hitting your pads, and it's getting loud in there, and they hooping, hollering, they're ready to go play like wild dogs. I mean, the Al Blades thing is played all the time. You the baddest MFI? I know. Turn to this one and tell them you the baddest. If you did that same chant right now, you might get 40 guys that are fired up. The rest are in the back. Like, yeah. You the baddest, I know. Yeah, let's go. You got to know that. Okay? So I say all those things to say this. When these young men take those big kind of losses, you could use it as a lesson and a teaching moment to let them know about overlooking teams, looking down on people, not playing up to the level, not responding to getting hit in the mouth. And that's what some of the upper level, Coach Saban and where Coach Cristobal comes from. They can say that. And in recruiting, Mark, you're looking for those kinds of things. When you go watch a game or you attend a game, you watch how the young man responds to missing a tackle, just like you look at how he responds to making a big TFL. You look at how he responds to being coached hard when he makes mistakes. You look at how he also responds to the free safety who miscommunicated. They gave up the tight end seam. Does he go off on him? Is he fighting him? Or is he pulling him aside and talking to him and uplifting him? All these things go into recruiting. That's why some people, just like Clemson, what they say, Mark, is he a Clemson guy? Just because you're a 5-star, you're a great player, is he a Clemson guy? Can he come into this program in the way that we operate, in the way that we do things and fit seamlessly? Or is he going to be an outcast? Is he going to be a problem? Is he going to be a hothead? Okay. So you have to be able to take these lessons and these lumps because they happen to everybody. But how do you respond as a staff, as leaders, and as players to that adversity and to some of the lumps that we go through?
The one body language gesture that I can't stand, well, there's probably a long list, but there's one in particular I can't stand, but I will state I understand it. It's human nature. And I'm 30 years older than these guys, and I should be so much more mature. And I would even be tempted to do this. And that's when, especially it happens for defensive backs because they're out there in space and everybody can
Yeah.
see what just happened. And if they get burned, but it wasn't their, there was a missed assignment, and maybe the dude chasing the guy that's scoring the touchdown isn't the guy that blew the coverage. He just
Mm-hmm.
happened to be there's always, I shouldn't say there's always, that's wrong. There's oftentimes this, like, I got to show this wasn't my fault. And there's this, like, where were you kind of thing on the field. And again, I don't judge these guys because they're 20 years old and I would have probably done the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I would be tempted now to do the same thing. There's 60,000 people watching me, and there's who knows how many people watching on TV. I didn't blow that coverage, and I want everyone to know it. I didn't blow it. Where were you? What they should obviously do is just turn around, run to the sideline, then have it out with their teammate on the sideline.
Or, get ready for a lineup for a field goal block.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. I notice I look for a lot of those things because now that comes with maturity, Mark. And like I said, that's something that you may be able to identify in a young man in the recruiting process. In the first couple of weights, first couple of days of lifts, first couple of days of 7-on-7, you're hearing about team fights and you're hearing about because one thing I've always hated, Mark, is people who just anoint leaders. I understand fans do it all the time, but just because some guy is screaming in the middle of the workout in t-shirt and shorts and doing the chant, don't make him no leader. Okay? Just because the guy is doing the jumping jacks at the beginning of the stretch doesn't make him a leader. He could just be the guy that's loud. Somebody say, well, what makes a leader? I would say once we start making football plays, once we do something out there and they respond, I would say it's a little leadership. But then you also have the flip side because you got a guy like Chase Young who makes all kinds of plays, but I wouldn't necessarily say he was a leader at Ohio State. He just was a great player at that time. But then you got a guy like just like Joey and Nick. I wouldn't call them leaders. They were just really good players. Now, your free safety, Indianapolis Colts first pick, 29th overall, 2018 draft. Hooker.
Yeah, Malik Hooker.
Leader. Laurinaitis, inside linebacker. Leader. Try hard guys, but the guys respond to them. Leadership. Anyhow.
I don't want you to feel bad as soon as I say this, wholesome one, because you mentioned something there. Well, we were talking a lot of Middle Tennessee, throwing out that game as being just kind of the microcosm of last season. Inferior opponent. They make a bunch of 90-yard plays. Boom, lose the game. I'm leaving out the elite. They never come close to losing those kind of games. They don't even, if they win those games by 30 points, it's close. Take everybody that's currently on Miami's level. And when I mean Miami's level, I'm not talking 5 and 7. I mean, like, talent-wise on their level, whether that's North Carolina, whether that's Florida State had a game like this 2 years ago. Michigan State, whomever. Doesn't Miami? I don't know that Mark Richt had one of these games. And what I'm thinking of are FIU, La Tech, Middle Tennessee,
2.
or yeah, I was going to say, even though they're Power 5 teams, like the very worst Power 5 teams, like when they lost to Georgia Tech, when they were 3-9 a couple years ago, the couple Duke teams they lost to that were horrible. Miami's had more of those games than anybody on kind of what is currently like a mid-tier Power 5 level.
I would reluctantly say yes to that because I think the other thing about people who cover all of college football or people who have their specific teams, like if you were to ask the USC guys, they probably have some losses and that broke their heart. Texas, they have some losses that are just, I mean, consistently losing to teams like Baylor and Tech and just Oak State. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I
Those are
mean,
good teams.
yeah, I'm okay. I guess you're right.
I don't even know what I'm asking for. It's just there's a larger collection of those games.
Yes, yeah, wholeheartedly.
Like when they lost to FIU, I was like, what is going on?
Yeah, that was a heartbreaker. It's weird though, Mark, because it didn't hurt as much to me because on my Miami Monday show that week, because Mondays used to be at that time, I used to do a preview of the previous game, and then on Tuesday did the upcoming game. I looked at their staff, I looked at how they were playing. I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised if this is a really close game. We come in smelling ourselves, and they are playing like they smelled bath salt before the game because they all are from, a small school in Miami. Usually we recruit a bunch of South Florida guys, maybe some Georgia guys, who all felt like they should have had the chance to go up. Like a UCF when they played Florida. They were just like, man, I thought I could have been a Gator, but y'all didn't want me because I'm 5'9", blah, blah, blah. They play their hearts out. Now, it used to be you play your hearts out and you hate that team. You're so pissed off at that staff. But, you had 15 tackles as a middle linebacker, but you're down 45-10, so no one notices except for that coach who comes to shake your hand after the game and say, hey, hell of a game, kid. I wish I could have had you on my team. Sorry. But no, this, and that was a thorough behind whooping. Miami scored 14 points in the fourth quarter, but they were getting dismantled. I mean, threw 3 interceptions. We couldn't stop a soul, bombs, breaking for 80-yard runs, whatever. Yeah, Miami's had a bunch of disappointing losses. I foresee more disappointing losses this upcoming season, also for Miami. I don't think it'll be a really great season again this upcoming year. I truly don't. But maybe some of the scheming on the offensive side and the defensive side can make some of those things change. And we're about to get into our breakdown of the offensive viewpoint with Coach Dawson here soon.
And Virginia Tech were basically tied for the worst team in the league, and Miami came that close to losing both of them. Okay, let's hit the super chats, and then we'll go to the offense. Falcon Rex, I can't state this emphatically enough. Thank you. You're amazing. Thank you for being here. Appreciate your support. Appreciate your comments. Appreciate everything about you. You're the man. Super sticker from him. Thank you so much for that. Falcon Rex comes back with a super chat. H1H, what does it say about a coach who is humble enough to understand when they made a mistake and makes huge changes?
Ooh. See, I'm trying not to get too high on the changes for Coach Cristobal. I'm thoroughly impressed, to be honest with you, because up until this point, I swear he was a power 1990s kind of guy. I mean, that's what he was at Oregon. But he recruited so well, and USC was down, and UCLA was down, and he just had the most talented team in the Pac-12 that, them and Utah would just go at it for the championship, and Oregon won 2 of them, and no, Oregon won 1. No, 2. Because they played USC for the second one. But
yes, 2.
They're 1-3 in that matchup, but as far as championships goes, he got 2, and Utah also has 2, but just against him. It just shows a lot. in my personal opinion, again, I'm really trying hard not to overhype and get really excited about it, but this is something that I thought I would never see, especially reaching down to the G5 level, recognizing these two really good G5 coaches, giving them opportunities, and in all likelihood, it might bring one, two coaches from their tree with them to help smooth the transition and say, oh, you don't fire somebody after 1 year. A lot of people would say it's insanity to keep firing coaches and expecting a different result, blah, blah, blah. If you see that something isn't right, change it. And it may not be popular. It may not be fun. It may not be respected or liked. But if something is actually wrong, change it. And the Coach Gaddis situation, wrong. The whole thing, it just did not click. Him and his wide receivers, him as a play caller, didn't click. I don't know him as a person, so I won't comment on that. But wide receivers had one of the worst seasons in wide receiver history. Mark, I don't even think we had somebody go over 500 yards receiving at Miami with a top 10 quarterback. Good Lord. Anyway, this was horrible. Now, Coach Steele left us for a promotion. That's a different situation. He didn't get canned. He left us for a better opportunity for him. I can't get upset about that. But either way, it's change. So what does it say? It says, and it shows me growth and, again, being humble enough to admit to not a good mix, as opposed to keep ramming your head into that door and proving that you were right until eventually the wall falls and it's 2027 and you finally went 9-4. All right, so I like that.
Look at this. Falcon Rex coming back. Appreciate you, man. Love the flip the tables comment.
My defensive line coach / defensive coordinator at American would always do that. We always knew to go grab our Gatorade as soon as we get in because he's going to flip the table if we weren't playing well. So, like, hurry up. We would mark it would be a line. Everybody was like, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. Because as soon as he comes in, I mean, he's punching walls, and you're like, God, dog it, we didn't get the Gatorade. I'll probably get a text from him about this. Coach Jones at American, man. Former Florida A&M Rattler defensive tackle.
Folks, you may want to look it up, but Jesus once saw something he didn't like and flipped a bunch of tables over too.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Falcon Rex. Every team that plays Miami wants to beat Miami.
Especially if they were raised like Mark. You know, Mark didn't like Miami. You know, a lot of people in the Midwest hate Miami. A lot of people hate Miami, period. You know, we were
Where did that come from?
And loud and in your face. And ever since I came to the Midwest, people here hate that. They're like, you know, just shut up and play the game. Help the other guy up. Shake that guy's hand. Be nice to that guy. He tried hard too. He gave effort too. Stop hot dogging out there. That's not cool. And so they root for teams like Notre Dame and Ohio State, who somehow are holier than thou, as opposed to everyone else who played that kind of brand of ball.
What are you putting Ohio State in the same category as Notre Dame?
Because that's how you guys swear Ohio State is in Ohio. You know, it's just, you know, you might as well put a touchdown Jesus out there, man, as much as they love that school. Anyhow, yeah, I agree. Most people have hated Miami, whether because we beat their favorite team up or, you know, one thing about a team that can go 80 yards and you can't run with them and they get in the end zone and start dancing, it does something to you. It builds a certain level of hate in you. Referees hated Miami. Those referees had kids, and those kids and coaches hated Miami, and those coaches had kids, and it just gets passed down and passed down and passed down. And Yeah.
Based on everything I see on social media and the amount of college football fans that I talk to and hear out there, I don't know that anybody's more hated than Ohio State.
Oh God. I knew you were gonna say that.
I tell you, I see them ranked as hated as anybody or more so than anybody in the country. I see that all the time.
I wouldn't even think Ohio State is hated more than Notre Dame, hated more than SC, hated
I
more
don't
than
know.
Miami. Definitely not hated more than Texas. Everybody. I mean, good. Because I mean, they get all the hype and all the billions of dollars, and they didn't
I
give
don't
us
know.
nothing. But hey, I don't really know. Maybe it's for different. Like, we could go into this now, Mark, as far as hated for what reasons. Okay.
For winning, I
Ohio State,
guess.
exactly. Ohio State could be hated for being such an elite program and winning all the dang time, just like Alabama. Because I mean, the minute Coach Saban leaves, is anybody really going to care about Alabama outside of Auburn? Maybe.
Now, that's going to be an
But
interesting coaching hire. That's for sure.
I would hate to be the guy to follow that guy.
Yeah, I
Who,
wouldn't want to
man?
follow him.
Even if it's Dabo, I mean, you could
Yeah,
never live up to it. But
nope.
again, I would say Ohio State's probably hated for being great, and that says a lot coming from me, Miami Hurricane, born and raised to hate you all for what you did in that national championship game, and having a cousin on that team, Sonoris Moss, um, who was cheated, just like the Eagles were cheated this past Sunday. So now people, may see how that feels and wonders, but that's okay. Karma comes back for those. And I think Clemson got you guys back a couple years ago, but
Yeah.
still
If
not
if
good
I
enough.
if I took the same approach as a lot of people take toward that national championship game 20
Mhm.
some years ago to the 2019 college football playoffs, I'd say that Clemson cheated. All I say is that basically the officials were incompetent is what the problem was.
Yeah, I
Had
feel
nothing
you.
to do with
Hey, it's
Clemson.
an Ohio State guy in the chat. Oh, yeah. We're worldwide, Mark. We're worldwide. They coming to check in. Look at that, Mark. They coming to check in from Ohio. Mm, mm, mm. I will say this. I was at Ohio State at Minnesota 2 seasons ago to start the 2021 season, which was our first season outside of COVID. And it was a packed house, 58,000, the whole 60,000 at the University of Minnesota's home field. And I will say, it was really cool to see the travel, to see that many people come to Minnesota. And when they would score and do the OH, that was kind of cool. That was kind of cool to see. I was upset that the band didn't travel because I wanted to see them dot the I. That's on my bucket list to see that happen, because you always, there's certain things that regardless of your allegiance, there's certain things that are really cool that you want to be able to see, and hopefully as a coach I get a chance to see it live.
Yeah, it's a very tradition rich sport. So even if you don't like whether it's USC with the guy riding on the Trojan riding on the horse, or pick your tradition.
Right.
Every school has them, and some of them are extremely famous, of course. Yeah, they are all cool and part of the history of the game and the legacy of the game.
What would you
Talking
say
Rex.
is Miami's tradition?
Well, when I think of Miami, when I think
Well, besides you getting upset about thinking about Miami.
I don't get upset thinking about Miami. I've got a
Okay.
nice Miami channel. I'm supported by a lot of nice Miami folks that love the Canes. I got nothing against Miami. Um, I think of them running out in smoke.
Yeah. And it's so crazy, Mark, because they do it at Pop Warner levels now. But that used to be a Miami thing, running, because everybody just ran out to smoke. They just ran out, it wasn't a big thing. But that smoke, and then Miami was one of the first teams to transition from the traditional gray face mask to the all white. I don't know if you knew that.
I
But
didn't.
the white face mask with the white helmet. Miami was one of the first teams to do that because everybody wore gray. I mean, you had your logo and your colors, but you had a neutral gray face mask. And we were one of the first to do the all white. We also were one of the first Nike to put a Nike swoosh on our uniform, but that's no more. We're 3-stripe gang now. But yeah, sorry, go ahead and answer.
And I assume that everyone had just a traditional gray face mask because probably from the first time that they had actual hard helmets, they probably painted the helmet and then they just attached the face mask and didn't think to paint it, just attached it. Falconer X, what you got here? Coaches need players. Mario is recruiting them.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a very simple statement. It's so crazy, Mark, because this debate, and I listen to a lot of coaching podcasts, and you know, you are what you continuously do and listen to. So besides reading my word or listening to my word, I listen to a lot of coaching stuff. And there's a big battle between that, Mark, because at different levels, there's the thought process of my scheme or how I recruit to the scheme and implement players. And there's other coaches who are like, man, it don't matter what scheme you got. If I got the best left tackle, I don't care what you're running. You can't beat him. If I got the fastest dude who runs a go route, I don't care what scheme. If I get the right throw, it's a touch. There's nothing you could do. He's the best player. So it's a nice debate on that one.
Well, neither one's completely correct or completely wrong. It's obviously a combination. And obviously the guys on the field have to execute and make the plays. But there's a reason that, and the two best examples of this that I can think of are Nick Saban and Urban Meyer, that any campus they've walked on, the team's immediately better the next year. There's obviously something to that because they just inherited the same team that won like 5 less games than they were able to produce immediately. So obviously the two go hand in hand.
Or even somebody like Urban to come in and go undefeated with a team. His first year. Just steps in and goes, oh, we're not losing the game. I don't care. We can't go to a bowl game. I don't care. We're undefeated. If this was the 60s, we would have a share of the championship.
That's right.
Isn't that nuts?
And so if
you would have to explain that. Yeah. So you would have to explain that to kids in the 40s and 50s, 2050, 2040. Yeah. Hey, Grandpa, why is Ohio State not national champion in 2012? Well, they were under sanction.
Some players on the team wanted some tattoos, so they traded a few little trinkets and awards for tattoos. Are you kidding me? Like within 10 years, these guys were getting NIL deals and all sorts of stuff. And these guys get in trouble for trading tattoos, and their coach
fired.
I actually
worked out well for the institution going to get Urban, but that's crazy.
Yeah, but Jim Tressel did quite a job too.
Even at Youngstown.
Yeah.
Yeah, his name rings bells in my local area here too, because they played each other a lot back then, him coming over to the Dome.
Falconer X says, here, I'm at peace when Miami plays and beats Ohio State.
2011.
They've played twice. Yeah, they played twice since the championship game, and they split.
Miami won at home. It was a thrashing in 2010, though. I thought it was 34-10 or something like that.
Ohio State gave up some late TDs. It was a little bit closer on the scoreboard. And even the game in Miami, the Canes won 24-6. Now, it wasn't that too was kind of, that was like a,
I was at that game.
That was like, oh, were you? That was like a,
hell yeah.
That was like a 10-6 or 14-6 game fairly late. And then Miami.
Yeah, and then it was a touchdown. And Mike James up the gut on a dive. Yeah, but, made a stretch out. Yeah.
That was the Luke Fickell year at Ohio State. Falconer X coming back. Saban switched from power run to pass. And this kind of ties into what Falconer X was talking about before about coaches not being too stubborn or having too much of an ego to change. And even though Nick Saban would love football to be played like it was in 1985, he said, hey, I got to adapt. I got to change.
Well, because Mark, they started getting him. You know, you talk about he goes back to back 11 and 12, right? He doesn't see another championship until 2015 because he runs into whom? 2013, he runs into Johnny Manziel. 2014, he runs into, wait, I got it mixed up. It's a year behind, right?
Yeah.
12, he
Manziel
runs
beat
into
them in
Johnny
12, and
Manziel.
they still won the national championship.
Right. Okay. But then the schemes, they started to really, beat him up. He couldn't have a 280-pound inside linebacker who converts to defensive end on third downs like Dante Hightower to rush the passer. He can't have a 294-pound four-eye technique or stand-up outside linebacker on early downs like Courtney Upshaw, who played D tackle in the NFL. He was that heavy. He couldn't do that anymore. He couldn't have a 350-pound Terrence Cody as a true nose or a 335-pound DN as the other four-eye and Marcel Darius. Okay, he had to revamp not only the defense but the offense because Auburn started going up tempo with Gus and really gassing his team. I mean, he started complaining about the up tempo being unethical and should be a penalty, and we shouldn't be able to do that. So.
Yeah, and so did Brett Bielema. Falconer X. I get Miami hate in Iowa and South Dakota.
Up here in Indy, I don't get that much hate, Mark. I get a bunch of people that do this right here to you, boy. They throw it up at you, boy. And I go, yeah, appreciate you. You were raised right. But I do get people who are like, this isn't the 80s. And I go, yeah, you're right. Or they go, oh, man, that was a tough game. Middle Tennessee State. And I go, yeah, you're right. So, but I will always be loyal as it'll be my hometown team. But, things happen.
More from our guy. Miami changed the game in the 80s and 90s and hated.
Mark knows all about that last part.
Falconer X. Only good thing from Ohio are Buckeye treats. Okay.
I don't know where that was going.
In Ohio, but okay. All right. Folks, you can basically say whatever you want, and I will repeat it as long as it's a super chat. That's what Falconer X here is proving. I think there's only been 2 super chats that I didn't read because one was laced with like inappropriate, like not just cussing, like inappropriate words, toward certain types of people. And so that was obviously eliminated. And maybe there were 2 of those. There's been 1 or 2 that I refused to read because of obvious thing. It wasn't a football thing. So other than that, I read the super chat. That's like somebody asked me one time how much it would be worth to me that I would take. They wanted me to take the Michigan helmet off the shelf and throw it in the trash. And I said, if you send me a $50 super chat, I will take the Michigan helmet, throw it in the trash, but I am taking it back out and putting it back on the shelf because $50 isn't going to, if you want it permanently in the trash and never back on the shelf, since we are talking about a major football brand that I cover all the time, I calculated the amount of what I would take for all the channels for the rest of my career, and I computed it to something like, I don't know, $2 million or something. I said, for $2 million, I will take the Michigan helmet, throw it in the trash, and it will stay there. And I will never have another Michigan helmet on my shelf. So that ended that conversation.
Well, yeah, you want me to take this flag down, $2 million. I won't put it back up either.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, I am curious. I'm going to ask you this before we say goodbye. You mentioned the workout at the top of the show. So I too am. I've worked out my whole life, but I've been very lax over the last 6 or 7 months. So I've been back at it for a couple weeks. So what does your workout look like?
Well, I've been a heavy lifter for years, Mark,
Yep.
as a former lineman. So
Sure.
I always had to get the bigger guys off me. So I've been a 500-600 pound squatter, been a 300-400 pound bencher for almost 10 years now. But COVID happened. I got real fat and bloated, and now I don't like that feeling. So I have this little trainer. She's a little Asian lady, and we do a bunch of cardio and calisthenics and push-ups and planking and side planking and reverse planking and stairmaster. But I also understand that all of that in the gym isn't the problem. It's my dieting.
Well,
So I've been
yeah,
trying to
I'm
get
right
that
there with you.
under
Yeah.
under the wraps, and kind of climbing from the 300s is a little different and coming down than it is, and it's really up here. But having that high weight and coming down as opposed to somebody who's like a buck 10 who's trying to get up to like that beefy 220, both are can happen and have varying difficulties. But for me, it's just a consistent thing with the dieting. And um, it's funny because I one of the things that really got me were we were talking about lifting. I would say in the off season, and somebody commented in the bottom. They were like, "It's funny to see this fat ass talking about lifting." And that really hit home. I was like,
Really?
"Wow, yeah, yeah,
Somebody on our show?
yeah, yeah." In the comment section, that really hit home because I was like, "Yeah, man, that's nuts." Like I'm sitting here like, "Man, these guys supposed to be running and lifting, and then look at me," So
Like, I understand
it's
that
it's a
point to
part
a
of it.
certain extent. Like I've thought of that and heard it said about coaches. Got this fat coach out of shape, and he's screaming at these dudes to run more and run harder. And well, yeah, I get the point, but that's not his role. His
Right.
role is not to be in shape to execute his job. That doesn't execute his job. His job is to coach the team. Their job, they have to be in shape or they cannot execute. You cannot play football well being out of shape. So
Mhm.
I get the point, but it's not like if you're just from human to human yelling at somebody saying, "Yeah, you're fat and out of shape," when you're fat and out of shape.
Mhm.
But if you're a coach
Yeah.
and they're a player, well,
Yeah, I feel
that's
you,
not
Mark.
your job.
And like I said, man, you got to control the controllable. I can't control what somebody comments, but I
Yeah.
can control how you respond to
Oh,
it.
you
And I can
responded to
also,
that remarkably.
um, it is what it is with that. So I mean, I don't really trip about it as much as I used to, um, especially because you get to the point where you're comfortable in your skin. You make the change because you want to feel and look better. You don't
Yeah.
make the change because somebody else called you fat. I've been kind of a chubby kid for 26 years, so I learned how to have quick, witty responses and be funny and dance, and nobody can hate on the fat kid that's funny and that could dance. And if you do, you just look like a hater.
Yeah.
But for the
Yeah.
most part, they really appreciate that and they love you for it.
Yeah. It's just too bad that we have to be like that as humans because that's obviously something that can be easily picked on because it's visible.
Right,
When
right.
if all of our weaknesses were like written on our face, on our forehead, and you could be like, "Oh, well that person looks perfect, but they can't do this, they can't do that. They're kind of stupid in this area." Then things would be different.
And we all got them, but like I said,
Yep.
and then the other thing for me, in my coaching journey, it's just it shows the level of discipline. You don't have to ask for 4X polos. You could just get the 2X like all other coaches. Now it'd be different, Mark, if I'm a 6'5". If you're a 6'5" dude and you kind of 330 pounds, you kind of carry it a little different too. But as a 5'11", I don't really carry it. It's all in the front, baby. So it don't look the best. So, but I got a good heart, and I'm right with the Lord, and that's what matters ultimately.
Absolutely.
Now, you want to have a nice, fruitful life and not have the health issues that could come up of diabetes or cancer and kidney failures and things of that nature. So taking care of yourself is very, very, very important. But the number one thing we want to make sure we got right is your relationship with your Creator. It's just that's where it starts, and also where it stops is that right there.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I will say, just like you, I have never had, except for if I'm working hard, I'm just tired and all that. But for the most part, I have never had an issue with working out. You can get me to the gym. I love when it's nice out, working out outside, all that. That's not the discipline problem. The discipline, well, maybe working out to the extent that I should, but going to the gym, working out, never a problem. It's the eating discipline is just
Yeah,
that's
I
a
fall in love
whole
with Chipotle.
other
I
thing.
fall in love with Chipotle, and that's really helped. So when I was working at McDonald's, Mark, it wasn't the easiest
Mm,
to
yeah,
to do that. That was over COVID, so I'm just
yeah.
sitting there eating
Oh man, yeah,
quarter
that's
pounders and
tough.
milkshakes and cookies,
Oh yeah,
and
that
then go to the
I would
gym at
too.
2 a.m. to lift. It was but we do what we do to survive, and in the
Yep,
moment you don't think about it, but
yep.
we keep going. We keep going. So
Speaking of
thankful for
which,
life, man.
just one more thing out of me, and then I'll read Falconer Rex's final super chat. Appreciate that, Falconer Rex. Um, on the subject of overeating, not eating well, all those other things, I will let everyone here know that on Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time over on the main channel, we are doing the Great Oreo Cookie Challenge.
What?
Okay, this is what we're doing, Wholesome One. 6 o'clock on Monday night. I'm going to be sitting here with a full party size pack of double stuffed Oreos, and I'm going to be taking everybody's college football trivia questions. And for everyone that I miss, I'm going to eat a cookie. I might eat
All right.
40 cookies. I might eat 50 cookies, whatever I eat.
Oh, okay. I might have to hop in on that one. I got some questions and I think I could get you.
Oh, I'm sure I don't know everything. That's
Especially
for sure.
Miami questions. I mean, you don't spend a lot of time in
No.
your life. You didn't spend a lot of time loving us, so you may have forgotten some of that stuff that happened in there, rooting against us and rooting for
Yeah.
Notre Dame against Miami.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, Falcon Rex. Final shot for the night. 2 million for Michigan. How much for Ohio State, meaning to throw away the Ohio State helmet?
Oh, I may pitch in for that. Mark, what's your cash app? We gonna pitch in. All Miami fans, let's pitch in. I say $12 million will get Mark to grab all his scarlet and gray on camera and toss it out the second floor in a garbage can. On fire, on fire.
12 million. I think that would do it. Wholesome One set the price. I accepted. There it is. All right, man.
Oh man.
I'm headed to the gym now. I don't want it to get too late, so I'm going to head out.
Motivation. Yeah. Well, we broke down defense and extensive defense. We broke down psychology and things of that nature. So make sure you guys go back and do the hashtag rewatch squad because it'll be cut up and posted for that also. But next week, we're going to do the offense. We're going to do the offensive line. We're going to talk about that. We have some spring updates. We'll have some more assistant coaches updates and breakdowns on that. So be prepared next week. We missed it this week because of the hires. But next week, We're going to talk about Coach Dawson and his scheme that he's bringing. We're also going to break down offensive line. And we may or may not, so you got to make sure you bring somebody. We may or may not have some H1H film breakdown of Coach Dawson's scheme and what he's bringing to the table. I might surprise you, but the only way you would know that is if you're here.
And I will lead the show by letting you know, Wholesome One, my initial reaction to the Dawson hire, and you can take it from there. I came on live immediately.
I saw that. I got the notification for it, and I was like, is Cam up early? What's going on here? Is Cam on at 2 p.m.?
Well, I'm going to take it on myself. I let everybody know, hey, we're going to learn together. We're going to dive in. We're going to start reading about him. We're going to get in on this together.
Well,
all right, man. I appreciate you and everything that you do for us here.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity. You all have a great night, and God bless. Go Canes.